Well, thanks for coming this afternoon, those that are here live at Renegade MMA, and hello to everyone who's going to watch this recording. If you heard my last talk, I talked about repentance, and in particular what I spoke about was the idea that if you think about jiu-jitsu, you can conceive of that like playing a guitar string, that you pluck the string of jiu-jitsu and you hear the overtones of the resonances of the Christian faith, and vice versa. So as a grappler for Christ, as the lovely banner suggests, I want to think about how those two things go together, and encourage people to think about that in their Christian walk and in their grappling, and also in the broader aspects of life. If you've done jiu-jitsu for any length of time, you'd know who Eddie Bravo is. He's the head of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. He's an innovator, a very funny guy. He's also a very humble guy, I find, in the things that I've heard from him. And he describes jiu-jitsu as a filter for douchebags. So he says that it weeds, and no pun intended, it weeds out people with attitude and with ego, so that those sorts of people don't last in the sport over time. It's the adversity that it produces. And his good mate and black belt under him, Joe Rogan, the colour commentator for the UFC, says that jiu-jitsu keeps your ego in check. It helps you deal with adversity, and he says that many people in life don't actually deal with very hard things in their life. They cruise along and they pick an easy path, but jiu-jitsu forces you to confront adversity. And those of us who've been under a heavy person's side control, for example, or any other kind of difficult position, understands that. Rogan also talks about simply getting your butt kicked by unassuming looking nerds who could quite literally kill you. And I think that we forget about this at times, that in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if something becomes awkward or uncomfortable, you tap. But that could be your arm broken, your neck broken, all the ligaments in your knee completely shattered, or choked unconscious until you die. I mean, what we do is, there's that expression, bump fists and simulate murder, and I'll deal with the aspect of violence in a future talk. But what it stresses is that there's a degree of reality to what it is that we do on the mats. And if you're tapping a lot, as you do, particularly as you're a white belt, some of us that never really changes, and depending on who you roll with, you're constantly having your ego bashed into shape. So, is that actually true though? And if I look at my mate Jamie there, over 15 years, he and I have known people whose egos have not been filtered out by jiu-jitsu. And in fact, in some people's cases, it can sharpen them even further. We know people who have ruined relationships and damaged gyms with their egos, destroyed relationships. And it is a risk that we all run. So I want to talk a little bit about that in the next few minutes. I'm going to read from Paul's letter to the church in Philippi. I'm going to read a couple of bits. The first bit that I'll read is the following. It says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others." And so I want to talk this week about humility, how it sits in the Christian faith and how that applies to the mat. I want to firstly do so by providing an example. If you've been rolling for any length of time, you will know who Marcelo Garcia is. He is one of the best grapplers to have ever lived. And he's an incredibly humble guy. Now, you would also might be aware of, and I'm not raising this to have a go at these guys, but recently, and you can find the video on the internet, Marcelo Garcia decided it was time to take two of his students aside and say, "I want you to take a break from coming here." Not booting them out, but I want you to take a break and have a think about things. And he recorded the talk that he gave to his school talking about that. And I want to pick out a couple of the highlights for me. First thing Marcelo says is that on the mat, it should be a place where you can be friends with each other. And people like Jamie and John and other people that I've known for 15 years, they're close friends of mine, they're confidants and people I can feel close to. And although he says you don't have to be friends with everyone on the mat, you should feel free that you can be. Because you spend a lot of time together on the mat. In fact, you spend a lot of time in fairly intimate positions. It's an interesting experience. You should feel comfortable. And particularly if you get to black belt, you've spent a lot of time in a gym or gyms, it pretty much becomes your second home. So, Renegade MMA is my second home because I spend an awful lot of time here. So, in other words, what Marcelo is stressing is the value of community and getting together. And Grapplers for Christ, of course, is about that too. It says that we gather, and that's all about community and feeling comfortable together. And he also talks about his own experience and how he felt that he could compete and be a world-class competitor, and yet at the same time offer everything that he knew for free. anyone who wanted to learn from him, he'd teach, and you can find videos of him on the internet, some of which are behind a paywall, but there's lots of YouTube stuff and so on and so forth. So he's not about keeping things to his chest and hiding them. And through all of that, he felt like he could show people what he was doing and still do it on the mat and succeed and win and become a world champion. In other words, he didn't lack ambition, but he lacked, as the passage describes, selfish ambition. That is, he had such good stuff to share, he wanted to share it. And yet he was so much better at doing it than anyone else. It didn't matter from the ambition point of view. So, you know, when you think about humility in jiu-jitsu, I don't think that means that you shouldn't strive to be the best that you can and work hard to win gold medals. But how do you go about it? What sort of person are you in the process of doing that? And in Marcelo's case, it was, I'm going to share my knowledge. He also makes the point of that he discovered that, and these are his words, that you didn't need to be stupid towards others, or you didn't need to be disrespectful in order to win. And you see so much of that in MMA, where people want to sell fights, or they want to get inside their opponents' heads, etc., etc. And Marcelo says you just don't need to do that. That's not a humble way of being a human being or being a competitor. And unfortunately, that view has infected Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's one of the issues he was dealing with his students. Marcelo also recognised that people looked to him as an example and understood that that was his responsibility to be, in his words, classy and to teach others to be the same. And in the whole process of recording this video and talking about why it is he asked two students to take some time off, he recognised that he tried to inculcate that culture in his black belts and found that it didn't necessarily work, and he felt partly responsible for that. And so he called out those particular students and others for losing focus, because ultimately jiu-jitsu is about focusing on things that are important, as is life, as is the Christian faith. And what do you focus on? And saying that these people were focusing on social media and fame instead of the goals of jiu-jitsu, which is one, to get better, and in Marcelo Garcia's words, to take people to a better place, which isn't just their jiu-jitsu, but it's their character as well. Providing that sense of community where we can all be nurtured. You know, where you ask people about, well, how are you going outside the gym? What sort of things are you struggling with? We've had people through this door who struggle with drugs and alcohol and abuse and all manner of other things, and we're trying to take them to a better place. And those of us who are Christian try to do that, being motivated and driven by the Christian faith in that regard. Now, I'm no Marcelo Garcia. Not in terms of my ability, not in terms of my teaching ability, not in terms of my fame, fortune, blah, blah, blah. But for myself, humility means to try to do well on the mat and in comps, but humbly accept that there are a lot of people who are much better than I, and just deal with it. Once upon a time, I would have said there were two sorts of people: those who are better than me and those who will be better than me, and that's not true. I'm not an entire mug on the mat, but the point is that there's always someone bigger and better and stronger and fitter and younger and etc., etc. And just accept that. That's just the way it is. You know, and you'll enjoy your jiu-jitsu more if you can do that. The second is sometimes you roll for the sake of others. It's one thing to train for a comp, and you need to do that, and you go out and you just belt everybody. But sometimes you give the white belt or the lower rank things for them to learn, or sometimes you roll with the black belt who's a million miles better than you to give them practice at, you know, choking you with their latest technique. Despite the fact that for you it's a completely frustrating experience because you're just getting belted. So it's, every roll is different, and sometimes my rolling has a different purpose. Also, humility for me means, of course, sharing the little knowledge that I have and teaching, and I actually love teaching. And it's a humbling thing because you're taking time out of your own training to do that. You're also opening yourself up to all sorts of questions and maybe looking foolish. And I think it's one of the fears of a teacher that, will I look stupid? Will I not have every answer? You know, will they respect something that I can teach them but can't necessarily do on a roll? Ever seen me triangle anybody? For an instance. And finally, humility for me means on the mat always promoting a positive culture in my teaching and my on and off mat behaviour. And when it doesn't, that goes back to my last talk, which is all about repenting. So what does humility mean for you on the mat or off the mat? How does your Christian faith, if you have one, inform how it is you're humble and live your life and carry out your jiu-jitsu? Of course, anybody can share this kind of vision of humility. You don't have to be a Christian, but if you are a Christian, then your humility as a grapple for Christ is shaped by Christ. And let me read you a highly edited version of the rest of the letter, the rest of the chapter rather, for time's sake, and then summarise it really quickly. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus.